Ladies and gentlemen, hello and good afternoon from Jakarta. Welcome to today's FPCI-GRIPS virtual public forum on finding the know-how to navigate the perfect uncertainty, transitional world order, present climate, food and energy crisis, and emerging technologies. I am Laila, and I will be the master of ceremony for today's event. This public forum is brought to you by Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, FPCI, and the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies GRIPS Japan, and it is the third forum of this year FPCI GRIPS Virtual Public Forum Series. Today, I am pleased to welcome over 390 participants from across 36 countries tuning into our channels. Welcome to those coming in from Indonesia, Japan, the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, and many more. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panelists today, Professor Yasuyuki Sawada, Professor at the Graduate School of Economics, Faculty of Economics, the University of Tokyo, Dr. Amelia Joan Ripkaliwe, Assistant Professor International Relations, Universitas Pelita Harapan, Pino Thomas, Distinguished Fellow at the ASEAN Institute of Management, Visiting Fellow at ASEAN Yusof Ishak Institute, Visiting Professor at the National University of Singapore, Julio Amador III, CEO of Amador Research Service, founder and trustee of PAX Asia, and of course, our moderator, Mabda Hairunisa Fazila Siddiq, researcher at the Habib Center, FPCI Women in Foreign Policy Fellow. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin, let us invite Ambassador Masato Watanabe, Project Professor, GRIPS Alliance. Please, with pleasure, Ambassador Watanabe.
Well, it is an honor to address you on behalf of National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies Tokyo, known as GRIPS. I would like to express my gratitude to FPCI, led by President Dr. Tino Patijala, for their work in preparing today's webinar. Our gratitude also are to be extended to all the distinguished speakers and the moderator. Now, at the outset, I would like to express my heartfelt condolences for the loss of life and suffering caused by the devastating floods that have struck Southeast and South Asia recently, a tragedy that relates to the theme of today's webinar. Now, global challenges such as climate change, natural disasters, energy, food security, and health are growing increasingly severe. There are problems facing all of humanity that cannot be addressed by the actions of any single nation alone. Alongside rulemaking through international coordination, the provision of international public goods is essential, making multilateralism crucial for addressing these challenges. That said, the international community is increasingly concerned by recent movements challenging the international order and actions deviating from multilateralism. Now, the world is now multipolar, and there is no single leader to maintain international order. At this crossroads, where the Indo-Pacific region faces the choice between fragmentation or maintaining stability, ASEAN's role becomes increasingly important. Now, since its foundation, ASEAN has cultivated the importance of multilateral cooperation. By demonstrating further leadership, ASEAN can steer the region toward cooperation rather than division. Japan is expected to redouble its efforts in building partnership with like-minded countries that share the importance of multilateralism, and together with ASEAN, become a force of stability in the region. From this perspective, in my view, the following initiatives are of importance and relevant. First, reiterating the importance of the international community addressing global challenges. Second, maintaining momentum toward achieving the SDGs and taking the initiative in discussions regarding the post-SDGs. Third, cooperating to strengthen the functions of the United Nations system. Having expressed my humble views on those key themes for today's webinar, I would like to stop here and look forward to hearing the opinions of distinguished ASEAN Japanese experts. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks, Ambassador. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to invite our moderator to begin the discussion. Mabda, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, MC, for the introduction. And thank you and good afternoon from Jakarta. Thank you to FPCI and GRIPS and to Ambassador Masato Watanabe as well for having me. I am Abda Herunisa Fajrila Siddiq. I'm a researcher at the Habibie Center and also an FPCI Women in Foreign Policy Fellow, and I will be moderating today's discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go to our speakers, allow me to start with a quick introduction to today's session. During the high-level week of the UNGA and ASEAN summit last month, leaders highlighted that the world is heading to a new direction, one that many believe is the wrong direction. Threats from wars, conflicts, humanitarian conflicts, food, energy crisis, and the global ramifications of the climate crisis are increasingly elevated. And at the same time, personalized international relations is the new trend, and it has led to a more tumultuous world. In Southeast Asia, so that includes Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, and Malaysia, and Vietnam as well, are among nations experiencing the direct and devastating impacts of climate change, with flash floods and landslides across Aceh and Sumatra, killing at least, as of December the 8th, 961 people. Typhoon Kalmegi killing at least 190 people and leaving hundreds missing, and also thousands displaced. The Food Security and Nutrition Report from 2025 shows that 4.9% of Southeast Asia's population remain undernourished. Meanwhile, emerging technologies such as AI present both opportunities and challenges. More than half of ASEAN's labor force, so that accounts for 164 million workers, are expected to face disruptions from the rise of generative AI. Yet the technology is also projected to boost Southeast Asia's GDP by 10 to 18% by 2030. And amidst the rise of what might be termed as the global public crisis, or an era of global calamity and rapid technological changes, the rules-based world order, as mentioned by Ambassador Watanabe, is being challenged, and the effectiveness and the legitimacy of multilateral mechanisms are being questioned. Mistrust has grown, often fueled by geopolitical and geoeconomic rivalry, and Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific region as well has been regarded as an important locus within which geopolitical rivalry manifests itself into interstate tensions and great power competition, further compounding efforts in forging solutions in the face of the complexity of the global world crisis. And to dive deep into how countries in Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific region can turn these overlapping challenges into opportunities for sustainable growth and leadership, today's discussion will explore how the region can strengthen collaboration, resilience, and innovation amidst global uncertainty. And ladies and gentlemen, to address these developments, we are joined by first Professor Yasuyuki Sawada, Professor at the Graduate School of Economics, Faculty of Economics at the University of Tokyo. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining to this discussion. We also have Dr. Amelia Joan Ripkaliwe, Assistant Professor at the International Relations Program, Universitas Pelita Harapan. Thank you very much, Dr. Liwe, for joining to this discussion. We also have Professor Vinod Thomas, Distinguished Fellow at the Asian Institute of Management, and also a Visiting Fellow at ISEA's Yusof Ishak Institute, and a Visiting Professor at the National University of Singapore. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining this discussion. And last but not least, we also have Mr. Julio Amado III, CEO of Amado Research Services, and also the founder and trustee of Facts Asia. Thank you very much, Mr. Amado, for joining this discussion. Now, before we begin the discussion, I would like to kindly remind all of the participants of some housekeeping rules. First, we respectfully ask participants to keep their microphones muted while the panelists are speaking. You are welcome to raise questions during the Q&A sessions, either by clicking the raise hand feature for those joining on Zoom, where you can ask your questions directly, or through the chat box feature as well for those joining via YouTube. And also, of course, we welcome all of the questions or comments during the Q&A session later on. Without further ado, I would like to welcome of the panelists on the topic of today's discussion, finding the know-how to navigate the perfect uncertainty, transitional world order, pressing climate, food, and energy crisis, and emerging technologies. So I will begin by asking the questions and also direct these questions to all of the speakers. So first, as mentioned in the introduction, Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific regions are often considered as an important location or locus for great power competition, but also many of the crises across various facets that we encounter today. So that includes food crisis, climate crisis, energy crisis, etc. But also the region is located within which or adjacent to geopolitical hotspots such as the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait. And this really becomes an important arena for geopolitical competition. So I would like to start by asking all of the speakers, how can countries like Indonesia, Singapore, the Philippines, as well as the Japan in the Pacific and Southeast Asia, navigate intensifying great power competition while safeguarding their strategic autonomy and peace in the region? I would like to first invite Dr. Amel to begin your remark on especially how do you view these developments from an Indonesian perspective. Dr. Amel, please.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies and FPCI for initiating this forum. Very important topic and for inviting me to speak in this forum. And I also want to express my gratitude to my fellow speakers, and I am looking forward to actually learn from all of you. The questions about how Indonesia or ASEAN at large navigate this we can call transitional world order or even a new world order. Well, first of all, as a historian, I'm a historian by training. This is not the first time that we, human civilization, face transitional world order. After the Second World War, we experienced this post-colonial time that coexists with the Cold War. We enter the bipolar system and create the political economic system that actually is still functioning until today. The World Bank, and then later on WTO, it's still working. It's a system that still works. But once we enter the 21st century and we repeatedly mention about this multipolar system, in which we don't rely on to single or two great powers, there's another phenomenon that we sometimes overlook to what happened in our present time is the increasing capabilities of the post-colonial time states. The post-colonial states now are more capable in contributing to the world order. In other words, countries in Southeast Asia like Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam should have more shares in shaping this new world order. And how do we deal with that? I would love to mention about looking at what the strength that Southeast Asian has, the local wisdom that could possibly contribute something to the new world order. For example, in Indonesia, we have the principle of gotong royong, work together to solve certain issues. So such wisdom is, I think it's very useful in imagining, what's next. And also facing the local situation like climate change, prone to, let's say, volcanoes and earthquakes. I grew up in Manado, a small town, and we experience earthquake all the time. So we understand how to build houses that would be safe enough to face such disaster. So such things, I think we need to learn from each other more, and then looking at what we have internally that could contribute to this system. I think that's all from now. I'll elaborate more later. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amel. So looking within to see what strengths lie in our local wisdoms and learn from each other. Next, I would like to hand over the mic to Professor Thomas, especially speaking from the Singaporean perspective, what do you take to be what Singapore and Southeast Asia are doing, as well as within the Pacific, in safeguarding our strategic autonomy and peace in the region? Professor, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mabda and Ambassador Watanabe. It's a pleasure to be on this panel, and thank you very much for all this preparation. This is obviously a central question, both from ASEAN's point of view, Southeast Asia's point of view, but from the world's side as well. And the first thing that strikes me as we look at considerable changes in the global geopolitics is that a certain order of peace and stability, both politically, economically, and socially, is obviously at a very high premium. So all bets are off if that equilibrium is excessively disturbed. And so looking at ASEAN and this region in particular, relatively speaking, I mean, there are skirmishes and problems, how to maintain that order of peace and stability and predictability would have to be, at least in my books, about the highest order of importance. That takes us immediately to the changes taking place in the area of the trade regime, which is so important for ASEAN and this region. Many countries, relatively speaking, smaller countries are more dependent on the global, Indonesia included as well, despite its size. And so that has to be a matter of great concern, how the system evolves with respect to trade, investment, and flows, and as well as people. And here, the latest evidence is a bit comforting in that the region has maintained a certain order of growth rate for 4 to 4.5%, despite the tariffs and so on. But that cannot be taken for granted. So right now, if ASEAN is maybe the fifth largest region, just after Japan, and Japan is about 4 trillion and 4.25, let's say, and ASEAN is 4, that could change to by 2030 the other way around. Now, that cannot be taken for granted in the sense that the uncertainty in the entire scenario that we are facing calls into question many of the assumptions we had made. And I'll just mention the third point, but I won't elaborate in the interest of time, and I think we'll come back to that. For the region, aside from its peace and stability, as well as trade regime, the other factor that is of particular concern or interest would have to be climate change, because of its extraordinarily unique ecology, as well as its contribution to the problem itself, although small to begin with, but rapidly rising. And so it's in the interest of the region to forge agreements amongst themselves, as well as with the rest of the world. And this part is not going well, if we are frank about the whole issue, and a lot more work needs to be done. I'll stop here, but we'll, I'm sure, come back to many of these points later.
Thank you, Professor Thomas. So, a very important point that we will surely come back later on climate change, because, of course, I think hearing the devastating news from the last few weeks, this topic is certainly of interest and resonates truly with a lot of our audience as well. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Amador, especially from speaking from the Philippines. What do you take to be what have been the measures that the Philippines take in the Southeast Asia as well take in navigating intensifying great power competition while safeguarding strategic autonomy amidst the crisis that is unfolding today? Mr. Amador, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and I'd like to apologize in advance if my internet is lagging. And I think this is one issue where Southeast Asia also needs to improve on, which is really connectivity. But let me also express my appreciation to FPCI and GRIPS for the kind invitation. Now, the word that was used earlier by the moderator was about navigating these tensions, and I think that is very appropriate because one of the biggest manifestation for geopolitical competition and this transition, as one of our earlier speakers noted, is in the maritime area. And we are seeing this primarily in the South China Sea. Even when you expand it a little bit and go to Taiwan, maritime remains to be a predominant issue. And maybe rightly so, because if we remember our history, right, the transition to the current superpower, the great power transition primarily occurred because of the need to protect the maritime commons and the sea lanes of communication. Now, having said that, I think this is a challenge that Southeast Asia and the member countries of ASEAN really have to face on. But it's not as if this is new, right? We have faced this in the founding of ASEAN. And the very idea of founding ASEAN was to stabilize our regional environment so that a lot of the countries could focus on their internal domestic security issues. The difference today is that most of the challenges, the difference primarily is that many of the countries do not have their domestic security issues anymore, at least not to the great extent that it was during the founding of ASEAN, but we are facing even more the face of climate change. So when we talk about, preventing disasters as becoming a norm, actually, the thing is, typhoons and earthquakes will be the norm, right? And responding to them is the challenge, actually, because most of us are already very stressed. Most of our countries are already very stressed because we get hit by 2 typhoons or 3 super typhoons a year, a massive earthquake or volcanoes erupting. And many of us are actually, particularly in Southeast Asia, alone. But going back to great power competition, I think we in ASEAN have to consider the fact that, we put a lot of stock in ASEAN, but formally ASEAN is still in fact an interregional association of governments, right? It is not a supranational organization. So responding to great of national interest rather than a shared regional interest. So first, we also have to look into the fact that we talk about an ASEAN community, but the very structures that support ASEAN community are not a community, right? They are interregional. It is still an interregional organization. That means that states still put a lot of stock towards national interest, national security, and so on. And that the way that we will respond to great power competition is first and foremost a matter of what is important to each member state, rather than what is important to ASEAN as a whole. And we will see this, right? Instead of strengthening our regional ability to be still platform convergence, some of our member states start looking for memberships in other economic and security bodies. This is not a criticism, but this is a mere reflection of what is the reality for us in Southeast Asia. So I think I'll stop there, and then maybe in the forthcoming discussion we can elaborate some more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amador. So very important point on how in a lot of cases, and even the fact that how ASEAN is structured itself, of course, in a lot of cases, national interests tend to take primacy. And I think that's a very important point to take it. Also, how climate change and climate change-induced disasters has become the new normal, so to speak, in today's event is something that is also very important to note as well. I would also like to invite Professor Yasuyuki Sawada, especially speaking from Japan, and also, being a very close partner to ASEAN. As a very important partner to ASEAN, what does Japan take to be the measures that is important to navigate the great power competition amidst the crisis that we have now, especially in terms of how do Japan seek to contribute to peace and stability in the Pacific? Professor?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to join other panelists to thank GRIPS and Professor Ambassador Watanabe and other members to have these very critical issues. And I hope my views from Japan. And now I'm sitting in the ivory tower of the university, but I hope some insights are useful. So navigating intensified great power competition and autonomy and peace and stability can be, theoretically speaking, can be substitute to a complement. But as Professor Thomas said, Asia, ASEAN, and East Asia, including Japan, have been relatively well, and also global economies fairly working and growing well. I'd like to make three comments. I think three domains. I think I can make some remarks from Japan's viewpoint. First one is actually each ASEAN member and Japan and other Asian countries and economies actually join quite diversified and at the same time overlapped membership in multilateral alliances and partnerships, including, of course, ASEAN is alliance of 11 countries, and G20, we have membership. RCEP is ASEAN-led, schemes, including Korea, Japan, and China. CPTPP is also ASEAN members join. APEC, including US and China, and also multilateral development institutions like Asian Development Bank and AIIB. Many ASEAN countries, basically ASEAN countries, join, and Indo-Pacific Economic Framework led by the US, and on the other hand, Belt and Road Initiative led by China. Each countries have a multi-layered membership in these global alliances. So I think this can be continued. And also, notably from Japan, I think ASEAN plus 3, ASEAN and China, Korea and Japan, are processing different arena. For example, finance ministers and central bank governors have a regional safety net, such as the Chiang Mai Initiative multilateralization. And now there is an international organization called AMRO, based in Singapore, for economic crisis surveillance. So I think that these quite diversified alliances, each countries join. Of course, sometimes overlap and sometimes not overlap, but I think this can be ultimately, segue for more rule-based and open and multilateral global economic policy framework. So I think this is very important domain I'd like to mention. And secondly, of course, there are common regional issues. As President Amado said, that natural disasters, triggered natural hazards, a big regional common threat. And also pandemic is not only Asia, but also globally, it was a big disaster. And then, within ASEAN or within Asia, we need a more investment for connectivity related to infrastructure to facilitate more, value chain trade and resilience, enhance resilience. So, of course, on top of this, we have a different speed. Demographic change is ongoing and rapid digitalization ongoing. So I think that there are common regional issues, and we can work together. And I firmly believe, and these common issues, in order to tackle these, as I mentioned, multifaceted and overlapped alliances and partnerships can be a quite important foundation for nurturing a mutual trust and tangible cooperation actions among the partner countries, including ASEAN and China. And Dr. Melia said Gotong Royong. I think Gotong Royong in Asia-wide or global-wide Gotong Royong is quite important for working against these common challenges. And thirdly, but not least, having this said, achieving diversification and selective concentration is necessary to diversify away, some tensions arising from a great power competition. So I think each country has a different environment and different conditions. So I think each customized way, each economies, from the economic viewpoint, building up a resilience of such a chain network or diversifying away, and also less reliance on China and U.S. Too much reliance on trade and investment in China and the U.S. Probably that's one of the key common elements for ASEAN economies. And with that respect, I think Japan, together with Korea and other development partners, I think we can further contribute to enhance the resilience of each individual ASEAN and East Asian countries. So I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sawada. And I think some of your points, and especially the sort of new patterns of multilateralism with how they're it's multi-layered, sometimes overlapping, sometimes it's not. It brings me to a nice segue to my next question, which will be about, of course, BRICS, which I think is something that has been very much discussed about lately as well. Because, of course, despite rising pessimism over multilateral fora, which was derived from the liberal international order, I think some of the speakers previously alluded to how post-colonial states, especially Dr. Amel professionally mentioned about how post-colonial states have more capabilities to contribute to the world order. And one of the manifestations of this is how BRICS have become an emerging new multilateral forum that has been discussed a lot, especially with regards to, for the Indonesian audience, with us joining BRICS. When Indonesia joined the G20, there were expectations that it would help amplify ASEAN's voice in that multilateral forum. But now with Indonesia joining BRICS and Malaysia and Thailand expressing interest as well, my question would be, what implications might this have for ASEAN and its member states? Is the reactions the same with how it was when we joined G20, for example? Or could this development expand Southeast Asia's presence on the global stage? Or does it risk creating challenges for regional cohesion and the role of ASEAN as an institution? So I'd like to direct this question first to Dr. Liwe. Please, Doctor.
Thank you. Now it's about a multi-layered, multilateral platform. I think we need to keep in mind that when Indonesia or maybe other ASEAN member states is gonna join BRICS, we don't really leave other platforms. Indonesia is still a member of G20 and now is aspired to be a member of OECD. And I think this is a kind of phenomenon that we observe in this so-called, new world order, in which states have more freedom to engage in the multi-layered, multi-level, multilateral platform. So at the end of the day, I think, and this is just my personal opinion, the implication of such engagement really depends on the platform itself. Is it working platform? Today, in the 21st century, the age of technology, everything being measured by, it's not by claim, but the actual result. So while politically, and I think that's something that we need to be grateful about, states have more freedoms to engage in any platform that they deem be useful. The implication of such engagement really depends on the performance of the platform itself. I think that's my short answer to the questions.
Thank you, Dr. Amel. So utility or the functionality of the platform is a very important question here, right? I would also like to direct the same question to Professor Thomas, especially with respect to whether or not this development could expand Southeast Asia's presence and engagement on the global stage, or whether it will in any way or another, for example, jeopardize ASEAN relevance or the so-called ASEAN centrality. Please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I go with Amelia's take on this very much, that, as you know, from the experience of other countries and the various blocs, countries are part of several at the same time. And the trick or the key is to not get engaged in those that jeopardize one or the other, and that's unlikely in this particular case. But that said, I think there is a question as not only G20 member, a key member, but now also the BRICS. What are the benefits that can be gained both for Indonesia, but also for ASEAN? I think in terms of trade flows and investment, there's a plus. Taking a small example, being part of the BRICS, you are also a part of the new development bank, which has a capital endowment or situation that is favorable. So for what it's worth, when it comes to infrastructure, that cannot hurt. Similarly, I think when it comes to things like carbon trading, which are nascent or incipient in many ways, there is a role and a potential for ASEAN to play a much bigger part in driving that, which kind of is a no-regret beneficial policy for the whole world. And that is enabled much better with Indonesia in G20 and Indonesia in BRICS, and therefore ASEAN benefits as well. And in that spirit, the list probably can go on, but not to say at the same time that we have not exploited these benefits that well, because we had the advantage of having the ASEAN all these years, and how much progress have that really brought about would be a fair question. So we have to evaluate what these blocks do, what these memberships do. Do they really justify the investment in time and money that people are investing into them? And I would not just take it for granted that just because one is a member now of the BRICS, benefits will just follow. They have to be still earned. So let me stop here, but just to say that the benefit of the ASEAN being stronger and internally working in cohesion and taking the Concord 4 much more seriously than hitherto, all of that is part of the agenda, because in a way, the lessons within ASEAN, whether it is digital technology or MSME development or the situation of aging, all of those are very particular in many ways, and there are lessons inside. So a strong Southeast Asia learning from each other analytically as well as in practice could be a big benefit. That can be boosted even more with the BRIC membership. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor. And of course, speaking about ASEAN, I think it's very important also to highlight what will the next year take and what measures will be done. Especially, I think one of the sort of linchpin suspects to ASEAN, of course, is the South China Sea dispute. And I would like to invite Mr. Amador to offer your views on with the ongoing discussions aiming to conclude South China Sea's Code of Conduct. What hopes does the Philippines have for its ASEAN chairship next year? And does the Philippines still see ASEAN as the main or most important tool to resolve the dispute? Mr. Amador, please.
Thank you for that. And it's quite an interesting question. And I would like to say that I am not privy to the negotiations nor its contents. Let me just also emphasize that countries need to deal with their security problems in a way that makes sense to them, right? In this case, the negotiations on the South China Sea Code of Conduct is as important as any other bilateral in a way of communicating with affected parties on how to resolve these issues. So the Philippines has made strong statements, particularly coming from its leaders, about the fact that it wants the negotiations to be concluded. And, it has been many years, right? A couple of decades already since we've started the negotiations for this. And at some point, right, you get tired. We have seen in 2003 an attempt to fast track the process, but it's so on. We've observed that everyone, and I think I would like to ascribe good faith to all the parties that everyone does want to see a code of conduct adopted. It's a question of what will be the content, how binding it is, and will it satisfy not only the negotiating parties, but also those who will be in a way inadvertently affected by any such agreement. And we cannot discount their interests in these negotiations. Now, having said that, if you look at the way that the Philippines is moving towards its chairmanship when it comes to the South China Sea, I think we could also appreciate the fact that the Philippines wants this rightly to focus on the regional aspect of it, which is the negotiations for the Code of Conduct. So if you read the statements of our leaders, the focus has always been let us come to a conclusion to a Code of Conduct if we can. In fact, the bilateral aspect, that is the tensions between the Philippines and China, have not been spoken in this because the Philippines rightly wants to give attention to the regional role of ASEAN when it comes to these negotiations. Having said that, let me also qualify a little bit. I mean, we were talking about, like our colleagues from Indonesia, we're talking about the BRICS and other such memberships. We also have to look into the fact that the way that these tensions have been developing and the way that we have been responding have also led to more sub-regional and multilateral approaches, right? Approaches that are contingent on hedging or at least also for protecting some of the interests that may not be Asians. These are our valid approaches into and really, and I'm sorry if I'm breaking, I think, yeah. So there are ways that we can manage these disputes multilaterally. This is why we want to negotiate for a code of conduct. But we also have to look into other more pressing national security interests, which lead some countries to form unilaterals. And I would just like to emphasize as well that the code of conduct is not going to be a tool to resolve these disputes. The most important use of the code of conduct is to provide a framework for managing the tensions that come about because of disputes. So one approach that the Philippines has taken to resolve this dispute was take China to the arbitration, right? But managing the relationship with China and the other claimants, and of course ASEAN and those affected states, will not be done through the code of conduct. I mean, the management of the tensions will be done through the code of conduct, but there is a resolution will not be through that code of conduct. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amador. I think that's a very important point on what to look forward next, of course. And I think it's very important to emphasize that in the Philippines also hold very importantly what will be the interest of the region as well. Of course, I think aside from the sort of challenges that the geopolitical competition poses the region, other than that, I think we also have to highlight what opportunities are there, and one of them is, of course, AI. So I'd like to invite Professor Sawada to highlight, of course, what opportunities lies with AI, especially when we derive or distill lessons from what Japan has successfully done, especially in regards of how it successfully highlight AI as a very important driver for digitalization internally within the national level as well as the regional and global level. And Japan is rapidly expanding its AI market. I think it's at the moment is valued at $8.9 billion in 2024 and projected to triple in 2029. So it has transformed a lot of sectors as well. In terms of what lessons learned can the Southeast Asian stakeholders learn from Japan's approach? What do you take to be the most important aspects of how it has shaped its AI strategy and governance up until this point? Professor, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. It sounds like we suddenly shifted our gear to from a geopolitical risk to AI, but actually it's not. I would like to emphasize our daily life and firms and the private sector operation and government. surrounded by a potential big risks, mega risks. One is triggered by natural hazard, and the other one is geopolitical risks and economic crisis. But actually, arrival of new technology can be a really big threat. So I think in this panel, it's very important to discuss how arrival of AI can be really good for us or may generate adverse impact. And these different mega disasters can be compounded. So I think we have a lot of issues to discuss altogether. So thank you very much for asking Japan's AI policy. Actually, one feature of Japan's AI is friendliness. Friendliness for human being and also users. And Japan adopted AI Promotion Act actually a couple of months ago, September 2025, and that's around the how to make society-friendly development of AI. So that's the main issue. R&D, capacity development, multi-stakeholder engagement. This should be towards a more friendly well-being and society. So some concrete example. So daily life, maybe same to you. I use AI a lot, ChatGPT or LLM, large language models, for collecting. Actually, I do lots of data analysis. So collecting a statistical package, coding errors, that can be done by AI very efficiently. Also making tables for academic papers, charts for the projects, and also checking spelling and English spelling, English grammar. I use AI, and I feel I gain a lot. I used to ask my RA or some company for checking English, but now I don't need to ask or beg my RA at 3 o'clock in the morning to finish up this, coding correction. So actually, AI has been a very beneficial, and I feel my productivity enhanced a lot. Actually, there are a few emerging, very serious, rigorous academic papers showing the same. One of my colleagues, actually 3 of them, wrote a paper using some taxi company in Japan. AI is now adapted. So that's the AI-based route navigation system for taxi drivers, but also incorporated where are the potential passengers located using past historical data. So, and that navigation device is very useful for actually lower productivity or new taxi drivers. So actually, those who are lagging behind seems to gain a lot. Although expert drivers who has a long experience, they know where to go. 3 p.m. on Wednesdays, right? So actually, AI, if wisely designed and used and implemented, that will enhance low productivity people's ultimate outcome. So actually, this is very important because wisely AI is used. It's an improvement for overall well-being and narrowing down the technology gap. And other data or paper using BPO company based in Manila. There are many call centers in Manila. And actually, the paper or study is done by Harvard Business School researcher. So they incorporated AI-assisted, some chat box to help call center workers, response to the customer call. And again, low productive workers gain a lot. And those who are already high productivity and experience, they don't need, these AI assistants. And another experiment using a university college student, and that's the experiment of the use of ChatGPT. Again, ChatGPT use, lower, writing kind of experiment, and low capacity student gain a lot. Whereas a high capacity student, they don't need AI to improve their writing. So actually, AI, this evidence really encouraging. AI, if wisely designed, wisely rolled out, that's really enhance equality of overall well-being of society. And yes, I think that kind of implication can be very insightful. Again, Japan is trying to push this human-centered AI for inclusive and fair society. How to maximize the benefit of AI. So, of course, in order to maximize, materialize this, very careful, system is important. Multi-stakeholder system. Japanese government now have an official council, AI strategy council, and also private sector coordinated by Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, and academia, top university, and also RIKEN, top institutes such as RIKEN and AIST, National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology, managed by METI. This partnership and the official framework is really important to nurture, human-friendly and inclusive AI, and also facilitating investment in right human capital development. So I think these are the very important issue. And then Japan has been working on this, and now OECD has AI principles, and Japan is a part of this. So for ASEAN, by partnering with Japan, I think ASEAN can improve, tackle this potential divide, and then
Mr. Samad, if you could wrap up your statement due to the
Yes.
time constraint.
So
Thank you.
actually, ASEAN-Japan partnership, we can mutually gain to materialize more egalitarian and inclusive regional society, and also ASEAN itself can expand their voice at the global arena of AI, such as OECD AI principles discussion. I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor. I think your point on human-centeredness is a very important point here, which I would like to extend to the next question about climate change. Aside from the jeopardy or the dilemma with regulating AI, of course, another challenge that we are now encountering is climate change, going back to the point that we have discussed before. And I would like to direct the questions to Dr. Liwe, Mr. Amado, and also Professor Thomas on your response on the recent climate induced disasters, or the disasters that we have witnessed, unfortunately. For example, Typhoon Kalmeg in the Philippines and Vietnam last month. Also, recent flash floods and landslides in Sumatra that has caused mass casualties. Also, massive displacement, which has been linked to worsening deforestation and climate change. So very briefly, my question to the speakers that I mentioned before: what urgent measures should government and regional actors take to strengthen climate resilience and prevent such disasters from becoming the new norm, as we were discussing about earlier? So I would like to invite Dr. Liwe. Please, very briefly, I think in 1 to 2 minutes, what would be your response to this development, and what can we do to enhance our resilience?
Thank you. I just want to repeat what one of the speaker, Mr. Julio Amado, mentioned earlier, that like Indonesia and Philippines, we are going to continue facing earthquake, typhoon. What should we do? ASEAN has a platform already, and then I'm so surprised that just like what happened in Indonesia, I mean the disaster preparedness seems doesn't echoes what ordinary people would think. We should have prepared ourselves, through common trainings. ASEAN has ASEAN Declaration on Sustainable Resilience. There's so many platforms within ASEAN. AHA Center conduct so many trainings on, how to face climate disaster preparedness. So, but it doesn't reflect when it comes to a national disaster. So I think the bottom line, on the other hand, it's good to have initiative at the regional level, at the ASEAN. We can have a common exercise, pooling resources. But at the end of the day, I think it really depends on the political will and national commitment and efforts to actually make it works. But again, it doesn't. I think we still need pooling resources together at the regional level, so we can have a joint exercise or exchange number of knowledge and skills how to face such disaster and to create climate resilience. But at the end of the day, it's to the government, their political will and commitment to actually implement what the regional initiative already forged. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amel. And to Mr. Amado, what would your response be in response to disaster becoming a new common norm? Please, very briefly in 1 to 2 minutes.
Thank you. And this matter is quite important to me because my province was actually affected by one of these super typhoons. In fact, it took a few days before I could get in touch with my parents because infrastructure was down. So that's how important and personal the issue of climate change and typhoons are. And I think one of the things that we read is the ability of each country to respond, right? And that becomes even more challenge because as Professor Emily has pointed out, we're, as Deb said earlier, we're going to get hit by typhoons. Sometimes you don't typhoons, let's say a span of a couple of weeks. And then how do you respond? Right? You can only do so much. But again, national resilience, regional cooperation. And one issue that we have within ASEAN, and correct me if I'm wrong, is more often than not, the first responders are not going to be Southeast Asian neighbors, but other countries, which then tells what, a socio-cultural community and economic community, but at the very first instance of trouble, you look elsewhere for assistance. And I'm not only talking about the impact of these national phenomena, but also in general, right? Security issues and economic issues. That what you will. But it also speaks to that we really do need to prioritize the impact of climate change, the impact of natural disasters, because this hits the bottom line. Typhoon damage infrastructure will cause problems in your supply chain and your supplies and so on, will have an impact on food security and energy and so on. And so this is a massive issue. Cooperation for us to respond to properly.
Thank you, Mr. Amador. And lastly, to Professor Thomas, what's your take be on the climate crisis? What can we do together? Very briefly, for 1 to 2 minutes, please.
Yeah, thank you. Please cut me off in 2 minutes. On this very big topic as well, I think the Southeast Asian story that's evolving is only getting more difficult. Not only floods and storms, but also heat waves. People cannot even farm during the regular hours, and they would have to farm at night, plant the seeds at night. And that situation on both heat and flooding is progressively getting worse by all accounts that we have seen. So faced with that, I think what we will witness this year is quite dramatic, not just Kalmaegi, but the series of floods that have taken place, hurting lives and livelihoods, lives lost, 1,000 dead as in Sumatra. That is a large number. So the question is, what is the role of the region in anticipating it? And I say anticipate purposely because much of the financing, that the little financing that's available, very little financing that's available, goes to disaster management after the event. And that is absolutely essential. But the prevention of this, or anticipating that ahead of time, is becoming a bigger and bigger need. And that's where ASEAN and all the blocks that we talked about earlier could play a much, much bigger role, because that doesn't happen automatically. The market does not deal with that. It's a public good. And so how can one not only adapt, which is coping, which is absolutely essential because the train has already left and the climate is getting worse. And so you have to adapt, but also mitigate, which is really the prevention side. And that's politically very difficult for a country to do because we are worried about competitiveness vis-a-vis another country, right? And that's fair. However, if the region and more regions act together, that, whether it's carbon markets or carbon pricing or carbon taxation or whatever it is, all follow something similar, then the fear of competition being eroded would be that much less. So we have a huge agenda, and it's a real threat, and all bets would be off if this is not handled with a sense of urgency that is frankly lacking, not just in Southeast Asia, but everywhere. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Professor. So that concludes our moderated discussion. So we will move on to the Q&A session. Thank you very much for all the speakers. I think all of your points will feel a lot of interesting questions coming from the audience. So for the audience, you are welcome to raise questions directly by using the raise hand feature or by typing your question through the Zoom or YouTube chat box, and I will call upon your display name, after which you may begin speaking to the microphone. So I think we will do 1 to 2 rounds of questions if time allows. Each of the rounds, I will take 2 to 3 questions from the audience. And please respectfully ask participants to keep your microphones muted while the panelists are speaking. And I think now we have one question coming from Murni. Bu Murni, please.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting what happens today. My name is Murni. Right now, I'm a PhD candidate from Newcastle University, and my research is about the impact of climate change on the impact of climate change securitization on global governments, and especially right now, I'm interested in researching European unions, because European unions is the first, I think, regional associations that securitize climate change as a security problem. During my research, I'm finding that when we're facing words like security or securitizations, some countries seems a bit afraid with these words because based from Copenhagen's theories, securitization involving military, involving something more powerful, extraordinary measure, threat, something like that. But what we discussed this morning, in my place this morning, what we discussed today is all about the emerging of non-traditional security issue. It's not traditional security issue, but non-traditional security issue. And I believe the ASEAN itself is already concerned with this non-traditional security issue. But I'm still not seeing this kind of impact in ASEAN as regional associations. The power. I'm not a fan of securitization, but I'm enthusiastic to talk
Ms.
about
Moni, I'm
securitization.
very sorry, due to time constraint, could you please keep your questions very brief? Thank you.
So I just want to see, is this securitizations, if ASEAN do this securitization in this emerging non-traditional problem, is this possible, or there is a problem or challenge that why ASEAN cannot say like AUC, this is security problems? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moni. I think that's a very important question on is it possible to securitize the challenges that we have discussed about today. Next, I would like to invite Ahmad Saleh to deliver your question. Please keep your question brief. In the interest of time, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, moderators, my respected speakers. Very big views coming from the speakers. Very comprehensive views expression from the speakers. I would like to raise one issue is regarding what's mentioned from the moderator about it's related about the security issue about Taiwan. It is very dangerous issue and it's very big issue for Indonesia and so the whole countries in the ASEAN. Yeah, the problem is about nation state and state sovereignty. If we go back to the idea of the, for instance, for People's Republic of China, about intention to capture this country, and we have come to the setback in the modern era of the country. The concept of state sovereignty we have to uphold. If we return to the idea of China, so you have to go to the previous experience. What happened with Indonesia, with Timor-Leste, East Timor? What happened with Pakistan from India? What happened about Singapore from Malaysia? They can reclaim about their own previous sovereignty, but historical rights. This is very dangerous situation. So this is very big threat for all countries in the region. This is the important thing that we have to be aware about this one. It's not a small thing. It's very dangerous to all countries. Japan, ASEAN, Indonesia, Philippines, also have to be aware about this one. And we have to bring this issue in the multilateral, the global issue. It's not an issue about all about Japan, but also the whole countries. It's the important one. Second is what? The unity of ASEAN. We have to uphold the unity of ASEAN because this is the only one regional architecture can hold the stability for the next 50 years. And then the third one is what in the Pacific. We have to hold ASEAN into new regional sector in the Pacific, so we can keep more stable peace in the region of the ASEAN, the whole Asia Pacific. So this is the important thing that I have to raise during this discussion. Maybe Professor Sawada and other speakers can give some idea, perspective about this issue. Because if we go back to the views of the like what China wants, it's very dangerous. It is a big threat to all the countries.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sir, thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for your intervention. I think it's very important on the sort of challenges that the Taiwan Strait pose and how ASEAN is positioned in that sort of context. I would also like to relay one question from the Zoom chat box from Teku Radis Akila, directed to Professor Sawada. What economic strategies do you see as most effective for helping countries remain resilient amid simultaneous shocks in climate, energy, and food systems? So, what economic strategy is most effective in the face of such multiplicity of crises? And also to remind you again, there were questions on is securitization possible amidst all of these challenges that we've discussed today, as well as the threat coming from possible tensions in the Taiwan Strait and other geopolitical hotspots. I would like to first invite Professor Sawada to respond to the question, especially the question on economic strategies that would be most helpful amidst crisis. Professor, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, economic crisis, we discussed about triggered by natural disasters, typhoons, and also heat waves. These mega shocks. I think there are two important channels to prevent and also handle afterwards, beforehand and afterwards, ex ante and ex post. Number one is risk control. Risk control, for example, right infrastructure investments are necessary, and also some type of systems are necessary, ex ante, contingent policies, and how to mobilize resources. And second one is a risk finance. So when it comes to the actual disasters and huge loss, I think for recovery, lump sum amount of resources are necessary. So how to handle these cost dimensions efficiently, these are important. And both sides, actually for infrastructure investment, mobilizing private investments in some type of infrastructure is critical. Also, risk control. Of course, we need to tap the knowledge and network of a global reinsurance and insurance network. And actually, a disaster fund around ASEAN recently, CIDRIF, has been started as a nationwide, index type research, disaster fund. So I think these, systems, in order to design and build up, actually close partnership and very forward-looking partnership between government and private sector, as well as the civil society, is really critical. So not only these disaster-triggered natural hazard, but also crises and technology disasters, AI, potential disasters we discussed. Actually, these partnerships are really critical. So that's my quick response to this very important question.
Thank you, Professor. I would like to hand over the microphone to Dr. Amel, especially I think in response to the question on, of course, I think when we're talking about securitization, it's a very delicate question, especially in Southeast Asia context where, threading the line between what is security and what is not is a very delicate and is a question that we have to carefully take. So, Dr. Amelia, please.
Okay, well, thank you. Very interesting questions and important indeed. I think in certain occasion, under certain law, military in fact involved in the disaster situation. For example, to provide disaster relief. But I don't think when it comes to disaster, securitization would be the right approach. Because when government deploy its military and also, a certain strategic resources belong to military to the relief, it only point out just a few elements of the disaster itself. So I do agree with Professor Sawada when it comes to disaster issues, to talk about risk control, contingent policy, risk, finance. So all this dimension cannot be covered by securitizing disaster. So I think when it comes to disaster, this is like the problem of all. We need to chip in. Collaboration is so much needed. So.
Thank you. So that reminds us of the importance of collaboration, as of course, I think highlighting the multi-stakeholder nature of all the solutions that we've talked about today is also very important as well. Professor Thomas, do you have any response to any of the questions, especially I think with respect to what would be the right strategies in the face of shocks, especially in the face of climate and energy shocks that we're encountering today?
I think a lot of good things have been said about it. Only to add perhaps that, the interrelation among energy, food, and disasters, that has been emphasized in the synopsis. That is really something very live for the region because energy requires, more and more sources of energy, and switching from fossil fuels is proving to be very difficult. But eventually, without that switch, particularly from coal, it's hard to imagine how the global or regional warming could be contained. So the relationship of having enough energy for food production and everything else, but switching to renewables will have to be one of the biggest agenda items on which Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, all these countries have a great interest, a lot of initiatives, but all would admit that it's still beginning to scratch the surface in terms of the initial condition, which is very heavy reliance on fossil fuels. So that has to be one, frankly, concern that we should all deal with. And there, the regional part that I think Amelia or Yasuhiko emphasized comes into play in the sense that if it is energy and clean energy, can we export within the region much more, including subsea cables, new technologies, and one day hydrogen. These would be now imaginary things, but real solutions to a very tough problem that there is no point talking about moving away from fossil fuels unless renewables can capture that space and provide people with low-cost energy. And so if the cost can come down, and if regional relationships, Indonesia to Singapore, and if you can go on with a list of examples where there are ideas and initial startups, but can they go to scale would be the question.
Very important point. Thank you very much, Professor Thomas. I think to Mr. Amador, one of the questions raised were about, I think the rising tensions, especially surrounding the geopolitical hotspots in the Southeast Asia region, and that also includes the Taiwan Strait as well. So what do you think would be the importance of ASEAN in the midst of everything that is unfolding in terms of the geopolitical hotspots mentioned earlier? Mr. Amador, please.
Thank you. But let me just take a stab at the earlier question about securitization, because the essence of securitization is really you take a subject matter, a policy matter out of political discussions, right? And make it something that the government can say, we will prioritize this, there should be no debate because we are under threat from this problem. I think at some point we have to reflect on the fact that securitization is an easy way out for many governments. When we talk about climate change, we talk about food security, we talk about energy security. People will be affected. Livelihood will be affected. People will be uprooted from their communities. Taxpayers' monies will be used to fund certain projects, certain activities. All of these warrant political debates. And in our countries, particularly democratic ones, we have to consider the fact that securitization cannot be the only answer when we are facing these so-called non-traditional security issues. Because questions of prioritization, questions of resources, questions of rights need to have public and political discussions. Now, having said that, moving on to the question of Taiwan, geography can either be a curse or a blessing. And in the case of the Philippines, now we have the Taiwan issue up north, and we have the South China issue here in our western seaboard. Well, that should tell you, the challenge to the Philippines when it has to deal with geopolitics, that this is real for us. It is something that we are facing directly head on. But, I will leave it to my government to give a response. But what I can tell in the context of ASEAN, that this is something that we should be concerned about, not only because it affects an ASEAN member states, us in some other claimant, but also when we talk about the traditional security issues that bedevil us in the region, we have the Cambodia, we have the issues of Myanmar. Also was only for certain states. Why should we be concerned when other ASEAN states have their own shooting conflict with each other? So either we are serious about of our fellow ASEAN states, or we. So again, it goes to the heart of the question: is this ASEAN a real community, or is something that is nice to have when you need a big party? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amador. I think that's a very insightful response. I think we do still have a few minutes for another round of questions. So I would like to invite only one participant from Zoom to raise your question. Please keep your question very briefly, and I'd like to invite Pak Harimurti. Please
Thank
keep
you.
your question again very brief.
Thank you, Ms. London. And I want to ask to Mr. Masato Watanabe. We know that Indonesia have fast train called GUS, but this project is first time as a idea from Japan by JICA. Why Japan lost this project and get a gift to China to make fast train in Indonesia. Thank you for Mabda and Mr. Masato Watanabe.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And I think we also have another question from the chat box, which I think will be very appropriate to close today's session, which is from Peter Wang. Asia is flexible enough to adapt to the changes in the global order, and there is benefit to be gained from being able to shop around for regional groupings that serve one's interests. And I think this is something that we have extensively discussed also previously. So in this multipolar world order, which seems to be characterized by uncertainties, how can we get nations to back to building order that ensures sufficient protection for small and middle powers? So I think this question, I think, is also good to wrap up today's discussion. So I would like to first invite, I think, of course, there were a question directed to Ambassador Watanabe, if you're available to provide a response to the question.
Thank you very much. I'm a retired diplomat. I used to work for JICA in the past, but could you repeat the name of the project? May I ask once again?
The fast train rules. Fast train.
You mean fast train project
first
in
time
Indonesia?
idea from Japan by JICA.
Okay. Right. That is a very complicated question, and I cannot answer in 1 minute. But I can say, I can assure you that JICA is always with Indonesia, and if there's any need where JICA can provide necessary, appropriate cooperation, they are ready to do so. As for this train, there was a very severe competition maybe between Japan and China. And I think finally the Indonesian government chose Chinese offer. That was the answer. But in any case, irrespective of what is happening, Japan's stance is very much firm to be with Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for entertaining the question. And I would like to move on to the speakers to respond to, I think, the last question on how can we get nations to back to building order that ensures sufficient protection for small and middle powers. I would like to first invite Dr. Amelia to also, I think, provide your concluding remarks in 1 to 2 minutes in response to the question. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat again? Like how the middle power?
How can we get especially small and middle powers to get back to building order that ensures sufficient protection for small and middle powers?
I see. Okay. Very interesting question. It's I think we should go back to the fact that today with all nations are equal in terms of we have sovereignty, but the resources that we have are quite much different. The capacity building are also different. And therefore, I think that's the point that why we need collaboration. Because it's impossible in the international order that a state, no matter how strong it is, will be able to provide themselves for all they need. And actually, there's one terms that I found it kind of worrying in the terms of in the Torah is what is it in individual personalized international relations. Personalized international relations is not international relations at all. In the international relations, we learn how to understand others, understand ourselves, and somehow find a way to align our interests to work together so we can advance nationally, regionally, and globally. And I think the mindset of power politics, create fragmented world order will take us nowhere. So because if one cannot survive, others cannot survive too. So I think that would be my take. I think in this new world order, we have to try to understand each other and then find a way to align our interests based on the actual needs instead of sharp ideological division. And the needs are something real. It's a fact. Like what Indonesia needs these days. I mean, what our neighbors needs. And when we start from there, I only hope that conversation will exist and collaboration will exist. I think that's my take to that question.
Thank you, Dr. Liwa. So harnessing the power of collaboration and commonalities, that's a very important point. To Professor Thomas, please, what are your takes on the question? And also very quickly, I think in 1 to 2 minutes, your concluding remark.
Magda, I'll give my time on this one to the next speaker. Yeah, I think you're running out of time. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Thomas. And to Mr. Amado, is there any response to the last question?
I mean, it's quite interesting because that was the ASEAN project, right? They need to have regional collaboration, cooperation. I think the problem is when we stagnate and not, because at some point you will find that there will be other powers who are willing to shape norms, shape cooperation, and so on in ways that benefit them. As Professor Thomas mentioned, many of our international and multilateral organizations and groupings are working. But as with many of these, and even with ASEAN, some are also evolving because countries that were less economically powerful and less, militarily powerful in the past are quite different nowadays, right? So that means that they also want to see some sort of change, and those powers that are still as significant today as they were yesterday may not want to easily accommodate those changes. So we are in that situation where I agree that the states will have to look for regional groupings and other associations that will work to advance their interests. But at the same time, if this region, if Southeast Asia is committed to ASEAN, then we must help ASEAN evolve as well. We are seeing within ASEAN several of these conflicts that are cropping up between and among member states. We still do not have the means to find ways to discipline these states and to help them move along. Right? In some other regional groupings, there are agreements that you cannot join them until such time as at least you minimize or resolve these territorial or internal disputes. We don't. We just let them in, and then we suffer the consequences. So I think that has to be one thing that we need to talk about regionally. How do we help evolve our institutions evolve? How do we protect the interests of not only within ASEAN but those of our partners who are working with ASEAN? Because that goes to the questions and also in the chat box. Many of these questions from whether the bilateral dispute between Thailand and Cambodia, or Myanmar, or the South China Sea, or the other non-traditional security threats that are facing us, many of these will have to be dealt with on a platform. And this platform already exists, except that we have not allowed this platform to evolve to something else, right? Because then that also gives us some space to deal with security issues either bilaterally or multilaterally. Again, all of this will be useful, but I would emphasize that ASEAN also needs to evolve, and we need to help it evolve towards a real platform for cooperation and convergence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Outer. And last but not least, Professor Sawada, if you have any concluding remarks in reflecting to today's discussion, please?
Yes, thank you.
In 1 minute.
Yeah, I learned a lot, and Super Express in Jakarta, that indicates a huge amount of investment in infrastructure necessary. And also Dr. Thomas highlighted, ASEAN and Asian country should undertake a major transformation from fossil fuel-based energy sources to renewable energy. Again, huge amount of investment is necessary. So with that respect, I think JICA needs to collaborate with ADB and World Bank. ADB should collaborate with AIB Then broader, beyond this infrastructure financing, we have, as I highlighted at the beginning, we have a multilateral alliance in here and there, ASEAN, G20, RCEP, CPTPP, and IPF and Belt and Road Initiative. I think these are a little bit complicated, but moving forward, I really think this is a quite important stepping stone towards a more rule-based and more open global economy. And ultimately, we can achieve like WTO system in economic arena. And the basis is a global trust, cooperation, and mutual engagement, and accumulation of social capital. So I think as Dr. Amelia, Professor Amelia said, gotong royong is a very important keyword. We need to scale up gotong royong in worldwide, and Indonesia, Japan, and other countries should engage and commit in this global gotong royong. I think that's the most important message I took from today's very, very lively discussion. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sawada, and thank you very much once again to all of the speakers, Professor Yasuyuki Sawada, Dr. Amelia Joan Ripkaliwe, Professor Vino Thomas, and Mr. Julia Maduro for your interesting discussion that we've had today, and for the lively discussion that we've had, and also to all the audience for your engagement throughout today's discussion, and also Professor Ambassador Watanabe for entertaining one of the questions from the forum. Thank you very much, and also our apologies for running slightly over time, but thank you very much for the interesting discussion. And with that, I would like to conclude today's discussions, and thank you, and I'll hand back the floor to the MC to close today's event.
Thank you, Mabda, for moderating our today's discussion, and thank you to all the speakers for sharing your incredible insight. Before we wrap up the event, I would like to invite all the panelists and everyone for a short photo session. So please turn on your camera and give your best pose on my count. 1, 2, 3. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, everyone. It has been a fruitful discussion, and I am sure the audience found the session interesting and highly informative. Today's event is also available for rewatch on FPCI official YouTube channel at Secretariat FPCI. And please, everyone, remember to fill in the Google form link sent in the chat box to get your e-certificate for today's forum. You can follow our social media handles for more information about our activities, events, and programs, and stay tuned to our next FPCI GRIPS Virtual Public Forum via Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter at FPCI-NDO. Thank you so much, and see you at the next FPCI event, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.